All right. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Mike Mineta. I'm the Vice President of Volunteer Advocacy and Training here at American Promise. And we've got a great call for you tonight. So appreciate you showing up and having this conversation with us. Just a quick overview of the call. We're going to announce the Volunteer of the Month for February. That's always fun. And the Grassroots Victory for February as well. Something we just started doing this year. I'm going to give a quick overview of Citizen Lobby Week. And then we've got very special guests, Delegate Tim Anderson from Virginia, as well as Representative Ken Chesnick from Wyoming. And that's going to be the bulk of the call. We're just going to have a conversation and talk about this issue of, campaign finance reform, big money, dark money, foreign money pouring into our elections. And then, of course, we'll just wrap up with letting you know what's next for trainings coming up. So pretty straightforward there. But without further ado, let's get right into the Volunteer of the Month for February. Oh, no, sorry. I'm going to give you an overview of Citizen Lobby Week first. So this is just want to take a few minutes to let everyone or remind everyone why we're here. We are having a Citizen Lobby Week from March 13th to 17th, which is next week. This is an in-district version of what we do every year in Washington, D.C., which is really just a one-day event. And we really want to expand it this year and encourage everybody to meet with their local representatives in district. Now, this can be at any level of government. It can be a city council member, it can be a state representative, or it can be a member of Congress. And we're not going to get into the details of the tips for these meetings because that's what we've been doing for the last couple of weeks. So we are going to drop a link in the chat, though. Chris, maybe you can help with that. We put together a document with all the relevant links that we've been giving you over the last couple of weeks, including recordings of previous trainings. So if you want to catch up, you certainly can. And if you have a meeting set up the week after next, or 2 weeks, or if you're watching this even a couple months from now, perfectly fine. We're going to be having these meetings with elected officials until we get this amendment passed. So there really is no time restrictions here. We just wanted to focus it on this particular week just to give people something to aim for. Okay, I just want to be clear about that too. So the purpose is for us as citizens to meet with our elected officials and talk to them about the issue of big money pouring into our elections. Like I said, dark money, foreign money, and just start that conversation. That's number one goal, is just to start that conversation, start building these relationships with our elected officials. Okay, so that's just a quick overview of why we're all here. And Volunteer of the Month for February, Ann Drum, congratulations. This was also kind of an easy one, just like last month was. Ann has absolutely excelled as a volunteer, just in general. She does so much, but I really wanted to highlight her for what she's done just recently, which is put a ton of effort into creating a new generic presentation for us here at American Promise. Something that we've wanted for a while, and just getting a refined, to the point presentation it's really going to help us, as we bring more volunteers on, giving presentations about what we do around the country. So nice work, Ann. If you wanted to say something really quick.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm flattered. I appreciate the recognition. It was a fun project to work on. I've recorded it multiple times as I have practiced it, and actually just recorded it again about half an hour ago, because I'm going to be using it to give our North Texas volunteers some background to just help them feel a little bit more confident about the subject as they go into meetings with members of Congress. So I've just recorded it again, and I think we did a pretty good job. So go team. Yay to Mike and Marie and everybody else that helped put this together.
Awesome. I agree. We did do a pretty good job, if I must say so. So thanks again, and awesome work on this. I think we did like 10 different meetings, actually, iterations of this presentation. So a lot of effort. And then I just want to also quickly announce the Grassroots Victory of the Month, which is the American Promise Writing Team. And what we do with the Grassroots Victory is we try to award more of a group effort, a team that we want to recognize. And this team has really done an outstanding job since just starting in January, right, Marie? I mean, I actually got some numbers for you. Yeah, it's, oh, hold on. I just wanted to make sure I get the right numbers. So this team, just since starting in January, has done, oh, actually, I don't have the numbers where I thought they were. Is it 11, Marie, or
No,
more,
our
17?
first meeting was January 17th, and we've had at least 14 submissions. I think I'm shorting us
14.
a few. We've
Yeah.
had 4 published letters so far. There's still a few possibilities in the works. So there's been a good response, and I know several of our members are on tonight. Ann has come, Barb and Steve have come, Carol Kerr, Esther Diamond, who's in Mexico, that lucky duck, and a couple of other people. But anyway, everybody's doing a great job.
Yes, awesome. So yeah, we've got, like you said, Esther Diamond, Barb, and Steve, I believe, are on the call too. And did you want to read the one that you actually got published quickly here? You can, if you got a minute, if you want to. Otherwise, no problem.
Yeah.
I'm going to drop some links.
Okay, there we go. I think we're all
Can you hear
communicating.
us now?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. All right. So give people, the title of it was Give People a Voice. This was published in the February 5th edition of the Washington Post. It was online, I think, the day before in the Sunday edition. Maybe it was 6 and 7. The February 6th news article, Koch Network to back Trump alternatives in 2024, quoted a memo as saying, lots of people are frustrated, but very few people are in a position to do something about it. Americans for Prosperity is. Now is the time to rise to the occasion. As the Donald Trump tsunami winds down and election deniers are swept aside, the people slowly come to realize the election deniers wield the shovel that digs the grave of democracy. Hooray for the people. Now, however, we're faced with new waves of cash from billionaire donors stepping into the fray. Are we simply trading one ill wind for another as our political choices are being made by those with the most money? The 2022 midterms likely cost a whopping $8.9 billion of campaign money in a record, and the 2024 elections are more to outpace those numbers. But are the people getting a voice in the political arena? When political expenditures measured in billions, we think it unlikely. How did we get there? There have been several steps and missteps, but legal decisions have stripped the states and the federal government of any ability to rein in campaign finance. The tool we have to change this trend is a constitutional amendment that gives rights back to the states and the federal government to rein in ever-rising costs to play in the political arena, with the result being we get a political system beholden to the heavy hitters and not listening to the people.
Awesome. Thank you so much for reading that. Appreciate it. And the writing team, I just want to emphasize, is really, Marie's just got it going recently and is already, getting stuff published all over the country. So if you want to join that team, there is links in the document that Chris just shared. There's a calendar at the bottom if you want to get some support with how to join that team. There's also an upcoming writing team call that you can RSVP for at the top of that document. So it's all there. I encourage you to check it out. So, and this was Esther's right here, just a snippet. And then these 2 trainings are coming up. Again, they're right at the top of that document. So go ahead and RSVP for them, writing team, and the next legislative workshop, which is going to be a follow-up. And then before we get to our special guest, I just want to give an overview of what, again, this For Our Freedom Amendment actually is that we're advocating for it here at American Promise. And it is a constitutional solution to the dominance of big money in our politics. It would simply restore the power of Americans to regulate election spending so that we can protect our freedom, have our voices heard, and participate as equal citizens in our government. It's very straightforward. The operative part of this amendment, as you can see right here, it's 3 sections, but the operative part is nothing in this Constitution shall be construed to forbid Congress or the states within their respective jurisdictions from reasonably regulating and limiting contributions and spending in campaigns, election, or ballot measures. So I just wanted to remind everyone that's what we're here for, right? It's an extremely straightforward amendment. We're not dictating the solution. We're simply saying we should have the power to regulate, dark money, foreign money, outside money in our elections the way that we best see fit, either in Congress or within our respective states. So with that said, I'm actually going to stop sharing. And Nancy, I'm going to let you bring on Delegate Tim Anderson to the stage, and we'll go from there. We'll have a conversation. So Nancy, here, I'm going to bring you on the stage. I think you're muted. I think you're still muted, Nancy. Bottom left. There you go.
Thanks. Anyway, just to give some background on our in Virginia, our American Promise affiliated group, Big Money Out, focuses not only on the For Our Freedom Amendment, but also on state legislation on campaign finance reform. Why? Because in our pay-to-play state, Virginia has some of the most lax laws in the country, being one of only 5 states with absolutely no limits on campaign contributions, has led to a money arms war in Virginia. Now we have among the most expensive elections in the country, and I think that Delegate Anderson can attest to this. I think some of the delegate races that you're looking at, we've had delegate races that have been up to $4 million for a position that pays less than $20,000. So this year and last year were terrible, horrible, very bad years for campaign finance reform. Last year, we were excited 23 bills were introduced with only 2 passing. One of which actually was a great disclosure bill by Delegate Anderson, but because of sort of kindergarten politics, it never got signed into law. This year, 13 common sense bills were introduced, including Delegate Anderson's bill, which proposed banning money from foreign influence corporations. And this, interestingly, is also being introduced in Minnesota and Hawaii. And we'll let him talk about that. There was also a resolution introduced by another delegate supporting a constitutional amendment and bills that would restrict personal use of campaign contributions. In Virginia, we are unique in the country where a delegate or a senator a candidate can take as much money as they want and spend it on vacations in Hawaii. So as we said, we had some great bills which passed through the Senate but died in the House. And unfortunately, as I mentioned, only 1 bill passed. So here, I think that said, I think we're pretty optimistic. We had a great, well-attended Democracy Day in collaboration with 10 other national state groups. Increasingly, Virginia citizens are paying attention to this issue, and the fact that Delegate Anderson, a Republican, is here today is testimony, perhaps, and he can tell if this is a true statement, that legislators are also increasing awareness of the need for reform. So now it's a real great pleasure to introduce Delegate Anderson, who represents part of the Great Tidewater area. This is in Portsmouth, down by Virginia, in Southeast Virginia. Our group engaged with him right after his election in 2021. We had a great Zoom call. He signed our pledge, telling us as a lawyer he thought the Citizens United ruling was one of the worst rulings by the Supreme Court. For 2 years in a row, he's introduced really great legislation, which unfortunately didn't pass. And certainly he can tell you his story. But I just want to ask Mike if you could bring up his pledge. So we can, that's part of the story. I don't know if you could do that.
Yeah, give me a minute. I will bring it up before we end here.
This new technology is anyway. But the thing that he said was one of the dysfunction of government comes from the undue influence of large campaign contributions. Virginia has no limits on donations, and office holders are many times installed by millionaires. Reining in unlimited contributions to Virginia politicians is a top priority of my legislative agenda. So it's a great statement. And by that, I'll just turn over the proverbial microphone to Delegate Anderson. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Glad to be here. Thank you for the introduction.
You bet. So welcome. Appreciate you coming on this call, Delegate Anderson. I've never actually met you before. So it's nice to meet you.
Yeah,
and yeah, we always like to just get to know people first. So can you just tell us a little bit about, how you ended up running for office in the first place?
So in my state, Democrats had taken over all arms of government in 2020. and there was a big radical change to the landscape of laws that were coming out of Richmond. Virginia's always been, since I've been here in the 90s, some kind of a divided government state where one party holds one lever of government, whether it's one branch of the legislature or the governor versus the General Assembly. But in 2020, they had all three arms, and we saw them, pass some pretty crazy laws as far as I was concerned, and that I happened to live in a district that was the most competitive, most vulnerable district to flip in the entire Commonwealth, and I decided to put myself out there. Went through a pretty grueling primary with a long-term politician who had been unseated by the Democrat that was now in office, and I was able to beat him, and then prevailed in the general election November 21, and been in the House ever since. So that's where I am. I didn't wake up one day and think, hey, it'd be really fun to run for office, because it's not, and didn't think it'd be super fun to be in the General Assembly, because it's not. But I'm glad I'm there.
Yeah, nice. I can't imagine it's all that fun to run for office these days. So I give you credit just for putting yourself through that. Man, yeah. So let's talk about the issue a little bit, right? So, campaign finance reform. Where are you coming from on this? Like, why do you think this is an issue that we need to tackle?
I still feel like I'm an outsider. I've just been in office for 2 years, and my views of political finance haven't changed one bit being in office. My election, we spent $3 million between me and the Democrat to run for the seat. One seat out of 100 in Virginia. It's insane. Just 20 years ago, the numbers were maybe one side would spend 100,000 and the other side may spend 150. Now we're spending millions of dollars, and the majority of this money is coming from either from out of state, from oligarchs like Facebook or Soros or any of that, or from large corporations. And there's been just a continued push in Virginia that we're no longer electing anybody. We are installing people with overwhelming resources that that people can't compete with, and it's frustrating to watch. It's frustrating to see people who may want to enter politics but don't have the ability to compete. At the delegate role is the lowest level of state government, and you need millions of dollars to run in these competitive seats, and it just really squashes the ability for regular people to run. I'm not just a hawk on campaign finance. I'm a hawk on term limits. I think the most important thing a politician can do is go home. And politicians don't like to go home. Once they get there, they want to stay for a long time. And the system's set up that the longer you're there, the more money you can raise and the more insulated you can keep yourself in power. So campaign finance and term limits are really hand in hand. And when you look at states like Colorado and Florida that have implemented term limits, you see very successful forms of government, I think, compared to the other states, of proper turnover and people leaving, and when there's more turnover, there's more ideas to put better laws in place. And when you're in a state like Virginia, the longer you're in office, the more money you can raise, and the more money you can raise, the more ability you have of fending off people to challenge you. It becomes a self-licking ice cream cone, and that's where we are currently in Virginia. And what Nancy said is right. We really have no limits of how much you can raise, and we really don't have many limits of how you can spend the money. I could take a vacation with my campaign money. Not really just like go take a vacation, but I could certainly go do some kind of political event and pay for all of my meals and food and all of that, and bring my family if I wanted to. And that's just a crazy thing. We had a bill this year that said, "Hey, let's not do that. Let's not spend our money unless it's campaign related." And we couldn't even get that through. So
that's astonishing. Yeah. Wow. I didn't know the numbers were that big, actually, at the,
Yeah, it's
at the
crazy.
state level. That really is incredible. And I don't actually know exactly how you feel about this. So I'm curious. The 4R Freedom Amendment, the concept that I laid out before, how do you feel about that? Like, do you feel that that's a common sense solution to be able to allow the states and Congress to determine for themselves, sort of where those lines are?
So the way I see campaign finance, I mean, it's great. It'll never pass. And here's the reason why. Because politicians have no incentive to do something like this, right? The way you're going to have to fix campaign finance is a death by 1,000 cuts. Small incremental changes every single year to move more reasonableness into the system. The politicians, most politicians, their entire motivation of being there is for themselves. And if they're only there for themselves, then they are there to get reelected. And they want a system that is predictably more in favor for the incumbent system of government. And that means that there's going to be more ability to raise money and do things to preserve their power. So I really don't have, I would love sweeping bipartisan constitutional amendment and fix Citizens United once and for all, but we're not. The only way we're going to fix this mess is that a state like Wyoming, and I know you're on here, so listen up, Wyoming. You guys need to pass a crazy law on campaign finance reform, and it needs to be challenged, and we need to get it up to the Supreme Court. And if we can get it up to the Supreme Court, it'll give the Supreme Court the ability to really review Citizens United. And just like they did with Dobbs, Dobbs reversed Roe versus Wade. And the Supreme Court really needs to have the opportunity to reevaluate its reasoning in Citizens United, that corporations have free speech. That's insane. Corporations do not have free speech. They're corporations. And so the idea that corporations have free speech, money is speech and you can't restrict money, that's the premise of Citizens United. And therefore, corporations have unlimited abilities to give money. All that is based on a false premise that corporations have the right to free speech, and they don't. And so what we have to do is we have to have a state like Wyoming or some harder Republican state that can actually get something through and get their governor to sign it, to challenge that, directly challenge it, pass a law that would be considered in violation of Citizens United, and let it work its way up the federal system, and let the Supreme Court really take a look at this. Because with Citizens United in place, we are not going to get anything substantial through in any kind of a constitutional manner. That case has to be undone. And the Supreme Court seems to be in the mood to reverse itself, and this would be a great time to do it.
Well, Delegate Anderson, I will say incremental is not what we're going for here. So
Yeah.
we're actually looking to get this thing proposed and ratified by 2026. I know that sounds ambitious, and it is. Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, there's a lot we can be doing. There's not necessarily one thing we should be doing, right? We can be coming at this from a lot of different angles, and we certainly support everyone who's going to take, any bite at this apple. So let me just connect. I want to ask you, being a conservative, being a Republican in office, this does tend to look at least right now, as more of sort of a thing that Democrats are supporting. Do you see a shift in that at all?
Well, the Democrats.
Do you agree with that from what you've seen?
The Democrats outraise us 3-1 in Virginia. So I am very perplexed why my Republican colleagues are not more in support of putting more guardrails on elections. I mean, there should be, people should be electing people based upon good ideas. Who has the better ideas? Not who has the better money, not who can buy every minute of TV time between now and election day. It should be who really has the good ideas, especially at this lower delegate state Senate level that we are at. This should be something where you have to just work to do this job. But I'll tell you that my colleagues in the General Assembly have a very low appetite for campaign finance reform. All of my bills died in Republican-controlled subcommittees. all of the Democrat bills that were passed by the Senate that were good died in the Republican-controlled Privileges and Elections Committees. And so my colleagues do not have an appetite for this in Virginia. And that's surprising because we get our butts kicked every single year in Virginia with how much money Democrats can raise. And so it's interesting to see that Democrats, the ones who can outraise us 3-1, are actually trying to put guardrails on, and the Republicans who are getting crushed don't want those guardrails to be put on. And so I don't have it's an anomaly of nature. It's a unicorn. I don't understand it. You would think that the weaker team would want the rules to change to maybe make the field more level and playing field, but it doesn't seem to be that way, not in Virginia.
Yeah. Well said. I agree. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, does it? So let me ask you this. Part of what we're trying to do here is we're teaching people how to effectively meet with their legislators, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, we've had a series of trainings leading up to this. So I'm curious, in your experience in office, did you ever have like a person or a group try to get you to support something and they just did it in like a distasteful way or a way that just was not effective? And it doesn't even have to be necessarily about this issue.
Yeah.
And then a different group or a person asked you basically to support the same thing, but they did it in a more, effective way. And you you ended up changing your mind about it. Do you have any examples of that?
Yeah, I certainly do. I'll tell you the Tesla story. So Tesla had a important bill here in Virginia that was going to allow them to expand the way that they do business in Virginia, and the way that Ford and Chevrolet, they have dealership models, and Tesla has a direct consumer model. And Tesla was trying to change some policies to let them be a little bit more competitive. And I actually have a Tesla, so I was in for it. I mean, I like Tesla. But what Tesla did is they got all of the Tesla owners in Virginia to write the same email to every legislator in Virginia. And so one night I'm sitting at dinner and all of a sudden, I check my email, it's clear. And then 20 minutes later, there's 600 emails on my email, and they were all the same email, exact same email, different person. And it went on for 3 days. We got like 4,000 emails from Tesla's owners trying to say, hey, this is an important bill for us, please support it. So I personally led the charge to kill their bill. Their bill's dead because of me and many of the other legislators who were just mad, angry that, they did that to us. They spammed us with these emails. And we get those kinds of emails all the time. Like if you look at, from my perspective, I will get an email and it'll be the exact same email from 20 people. And it'll say, hey, we're really supporting this issue and this is the reason why. And, that's fine. I don't even pay attention to those. Those emails are absolutely meaningless to me. If you don't have time to write a personal email to me, I don't have time to look at your email back. And I can see it because it's the same subject email, same thing. I don't even look at them. And so for me, when you're communicating with a legislator, this form writing email is completely ineffective, in my opinion. I have no value. It's mostly irritating to me. And I'm not even looking at them. I may look at the first one, but then if I get 30 more and they're the same subject line, same thing, just being filed away in the, no action, I won't even respond to those emails. I would just encourage you, citizen advocacy, just sending out bulk emails, hey, here's the email, send it out to your legislatures. And if they do that and that legislator gets 30 or 40 or 60 or 200 emails, you're not going to get any probably positive effect on that. It's a waste of time. For me, if you're not going to actually go to the legislator's office and try to sit down with them, the best way to really communicate is really just to write your own email. Like, hey, my name's Tim Anderson. I'm a constituent of yours. I live at this address, right? And this issue is important to me, and this is the reason why. Now, first off, that's going to get my attention because they're my constituent. They're somebody from Virginia Beach. They are in my district. They are writing to me personally. I will take the time to not only read that, but I'll respond to them, and those emails influence me. Getting some email from a guy in Roanoke or Richmond or Northern Virginia, that doesn't mean anything to me. Those people are not my constituents. So if you're going to communicate with your legislatures, just communicate with your actual elected official, your representative, your state senator, your U.S. congressperson, or whatever. Just communicate with them directly, because when you start off, hey, my name's Tim Anderson and I am your constituent, I live at this address, that's going to get the attention immediately of the legislator or the legislator staff, because those are real constituents, top priority. Those people are the top priority when we're looking at things. And so I think that's effective. I think writing to people that aren't your actual electeds is ineffective. If I get an email and there's the 100 delegates are all on that email, it doesn't mean much to me. But if it's a personal email that means something to me, I'll read it and I'll respond. One of the probably most important emails I get, we had a bill that had sailed through the Senate 40-0. It was a Republican bill, and it came to my House committee, and the night before I was supposed to hear it, wasn't even on my radar. I got an email from a lady here in Virginia Beach, and she said, hey, I never write an email, but I'm a child abuse advocate, and this bill is not going to do what it's going to say it's going to do. It's going to actually have this opposite effect. And I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, she's right. And I actually was able to modify that bill and got unanimous consent in the House. 100 people all agreed to my amendment from this, because of this personal email that this lady wrote to me at 10:30 at night that made this bill that nobody was paying attention to avoid having a terribly unintended consequence. So that advocacy does really matter if something like that. And I wouldn't have caught it. I mean, we have hundreds of bills. I don't look at all these things, but that email caught my attention. I was able to look at it and was able to fix something that even the patron herself said, yes, I didn't realize that. I don't want that in the bill. And that senator was thankful that we had caught that way. So, I think you can really be helpful to your legislators if you are acting like that. Now, if you're emailing every day and you're complaining and you're not being helpful, whatever, but you can really affect government. And this lady did that.
That's great. That's perfect story for this. Appreciate that. And just to kind of wrap up, because I know we're going to bring Representative Chesnick on here. Delegate Anderson, I'm curious, you said you talk about incremental change, but do you believe that we're going to solve this problem of big money dominating, dark money, forward money, our elections? Do you believe we're capable of coming together? I mean, we're in a very polarized time, right, in our country, that we're going to do it, that we actually are going to unite and come together and solve this as Americans?
I'm not optimistic. And the reason is we have to unpend Citizens United first. That has to be like the forward thrust here. Now, we could upend Citizens United by a constitutional amendment, and by God, if you guys get that through, I will be thrilled to no end. Virginia will not be one of the 3/4 of the states to ratify that. I can tell you that. But it would thrill me to no end to upend Citizens United with constitutional amendment. But I think the way to do this is to simply pass a bill that says corporations don't have free speech, period. In direct contrast to Citizens United, and let's litigate that up. Let one of the corporations sue, and let's go through federal court and bring that up to the Supreme Court and let them take another look at this, because that has to be fixed. Because if dollars is speech and you can't limit speech, then you'll never have any meaningful campaign finance reform ever again in the United States. And so we have to fix that. And I don't think that was the intention of the Supreme Court when they decided Citizens United, but it's obviously an unintended consequence. And I think if they get a shot, I think these justices will fix it.
Well said. Okay, I appreciate that, Delegate Anderson.
Well, thanks for having me on, y'all.
We
Have a
all
great day.
appreciate your time. All right.
Take care.
You too. Okay, now we're going to transition to Representative Ken Chesnick in Wyoming. I'm going to let Chris take it from here, actually. I'm going to bring Ken on the stage. Here we go. And I am going to leave the stage.
All right. Thanks, Mike. And thank you, Delegate Anderson. I really appreciated what you had to share tonight. I found it really helpful and insightful and appreciate you joining us. And I'd like to welcome to the stage Ken Chestik, a American Promise volunteer and a new member of the Wyoming legislature. So welcome, Ken. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me.
So let's jump right in. I've got some questions for you here today. I understand you just wrapped up your legislative session. How's your recovery going?
I'm in detox right now. It's been we ended on Friday, and we had some good results, but a lot of not so good results. But luckily, the way the dynamic is working there is the Republican. I mean, there's 5 Democrats and 60 and 57 Republicans. So I'm of 62. I'm one of 5 Democrats in the House. So we're the minority. But it turns out we are the power also, because the Republican Party is badly fractured between what they call themselves the Freedom Caucus and the others. The rest of them have banded. They've started calling themselves Team Wyoming. They're the normal, ordinary, run-of-the-mill Republicans who have common sense and do good things sometimes. And the Freedom Caucus is always on the wrong side of everything. But they're almost exactly split. The Team Wyoming has 1 or 2 more people than the Freedom Caucus, but the result is neither side has the 32 votes they need to pass anything. So they need to pick up some votes elsewhere. So the 5 of us make up the difference. And we can go either way. We can go with either side and win. So we do have some power, which was comforting. And we use that power mostly to kill bad stuff. We didn't really get much good stuff done, but we killed a lot of bad stuff. So it was an interesting dynamic. I'm still feel like I need to take a shower after some of the crazy stuff that the Freedom Caucus put forward and almost got passed. And a couple of them did get passed. So it was a challenging session, but I'm recovering now and feeling pretty good.
Great. Well, killing the bad stuff is still doing the good stuff. And,
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like you're in the minority there, but I think you'll have.
Feels like I'm a World War I ace. We're out there shooting down bad. It's like combat, World War I aerial combat. How many kills can we get? We measure our success by the number of kills.
Well, thank you for your service. Can you give us a little background on why you decided to jump into this race despite the cards stacked against you here in the Wyoming Senate, in the legislature?
Well, I actually ran 6 years ago in a different district. Now, my house hasn't changed. The district boundaries changed with redistricting, but I ran in a district that was very red conservative, but I was talked into it. People thought that the incumbent there was vulnerable. So I ran in 2016 and lost worse than I thought I would lose. But part of the problem, what happened during the campaign was a dark money group that was supporting me started lying about my opponent. And they started they did a mailer that had a blatant falsehood about my opponent. And it did have that little tiny bug on the bottom of it saying not paid for by any candidate or candidate committee. So that exonerated me, but nobody saw it. And everybody thought, Chestik, what are you doing why are you lying about your opponent? I wasn't. That wasn't me. That was some independent group doing independent expenditures. And they were lies. And I had to spend time unwinding the lie and telling people, I didn't say that. That's not me. And my opponent actually, and I agree on this issue. So I spent some time building him up because I wanted to run a clean campaign. So that dark money group that was trying to help me really hurt me. So after I lost and Donald Trump won, the day after that, my next call was to Jeff Clements. Hey, Jeff, I want to get involved here. This dark money thing is a nightmare. It's even when they're trying to help, they're hurting. And I was a victim of that. So I want to get on board and help out. So I started working with American Promise we actually tried to get a ballot initiative on the ballot. We came close, but didn't get it done. But we created our group we call Wyoming Promise. We thank you for letting us borrow your name. But we had a pretty good time organizing. We had hundreds of volunteers around the state doing canvassing and getting signatures on the petitions. And it was a lot of work, a lot of team building, and we all felt good about the work we were doing. We just didn't get quite enough to get on the ballot. So then I've been kind of working since then. I've been trying to get the resolution on dark money through the legislature rather than have it on the ballot, have the legislature adopt it directly. And in 2019, we got the House to adopt it. The Senate killed it. And then this cycle, so then, I got to know the Corporations Committee people and got to work with them pretty well and had a good relationship with a lot of them. So I realized that, I could be on the other side of this and be voting on this on the other side if I could win the election, win a seat there. Then we had redistricting happened, and my house, the line moved, my house didn't. Now I'm in a district that's all urban. It's basically the southeast side of Laramie, which is the only little blue speck there's Jackson and Laramie are the two little blue specks in Wyoming. And so my seat turned out pretty safe. There's at least 2 seats in Laramie. Basically, the entire city of Laramie is split between these 2 seats, and that's pretty safely blue. So I ran, and to my surprise, there was no primary opponent. And there was just a token opponent on the Republican side who didn't do anything. He didn't really run at all. So I won pretty handily. And so I want to continue the work from the inside. We had some success. We actually got the Corporations Committee to adopt this topic as a committee-sponsored bill. Every time before that, we had a single legislator was sponsored. And now we have the entire committee behind us. We thought that's the way committee bills tend to succeed and individual bills tend to die. So when we got it on as a committee bill and adopted almost like 11-3 as a committee bill, it was a very strong support in committee. We thought we were in heaven. So we started the bill in this session in January. We started the bill in the Senate. It passed first reading. It passed second reading. And on third reading, 4 votes switched for no reason that's ever been given to me. They just switched and it died on third reading. So it didn't pass this session either. It was close, but we just didn't get it done. So we're still here working. We're going to keep trying. We'll do it again next session. We're just not going to quit.
Well, I want to thank you for first for running a clean campaign. It must have been extremely frustrating to receive unwanted funds in your election. And it's not the first time I've heard about PAC spending money without the candidate's approval. And thank you for your continued work in the state of Wyoming to try to address this issue of money in politics. And
it would have been illegal for me to cooperate with them, actually, because they were an independent group. So they're the ones that Citizens United empowered to spend as much money they want on electioneering communications, so long as they don't coordinate with the candidate. So I had no idea they were doing this. It was completely independent, so there was no legal violation, but it was harmful to me.
But a moral violation, certainly.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, on that topic, can you tell us why you got involved in this amendment movement? Why do you support an amendment to address this issue of big money in our politics?
Because I completely agree with Mr. Anderson Tim that Citizens United is the problem. It is one of the worst decisions ever handed down by the Supreme Court. I disagree with Tim, though, a little bit about if Wyoming could pass a law that says corporations may not spend any money on anything and basically thumb our nose at Citizens United. The legislature here is that ornery and independent enough. We might do it. We have passed some things this session that I think were clearly unconstitutional. And I argued about the constitutionality. I said, who cares? We'll do it anyway. So we might be able to do that, actually. But I have zero confidence that the Supreme Court is going to reverse itself on Citizens United. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't trust these guys. I think they are bought and completely captured by corporate interests. And if they do anything at all, they're going to make it worse. That's what scares me about trying to do it. It was an interesting tactic. I've been thinking about it, and I'll think some more about it. But I really think there's a bigger downside than an upside for that particular thing. But so the only way to overturn Citizens United is through a constitutional amendment. And like I said, we're pretty close. We've gotten close to getting the please Mr. Congress version of it through our legislature. One other thing I did learn this last session is I don't think it's likely that Congress is going to do it because it's so dysfunctional right now. So my preferred outcome would be a convention of states directed to this one topic, Citizens United and campaign finance. And Mike and I have talked about that. I am not afraid of a conference of states to propose amendments. I'm not afraid of that at all. The one thing I did learn this session, though, is that the legislature is terrified of that, and there's no way in hell they're ever going to go along with that. We had a convention of states bill proposed, and the proposed topic was shrink the federal government and stop making them do stuff and free ourselves from the reins of the federal government. And there were pretty broad topics that scared me. And I voted no on it because I hated the topics. I didn't hate the method. I hated the topics. But Tim talked about getting flooded by spam email. That was the issue that got us flooded by spam email on both sides. You've got to do this to rein in the federal government. If you do that, we're going to lose our republic. It just hundreds and hundreds of spam emails. And when it came to a vote, most of the Freedom Caucus said, hell no. Even though it was a pro-Freedom Caucus topic, they still said, hell no. We love the topic, but we can't risk having our republic taken away from us. So it failed miserably. It didn't even get close to passing.
Well, I think what you're saying is making a lot of sense, and it's interesting to hear the different perspectives on how we get from where we are now to a better situation. But I want to bring the focus on citizen lobbying now, because that's what we're here to talk about tonight. How to have a successful meeting with a legislator to express our thoughts, opinions, and how to eventually, win them over to what we're trying to accomplish here. So I'm hoping you could maybe share some stories about how some people or organizations have asked you to support something, and how that went.
I kind of agreed with Tim when he was talking about all the spam emails. When you get spammed, it actually has a negative effect. There are certain people, when I see their name as a sender, delete. I don't even look at the subject anymore. Delete, because they spam me with so much crazy stuff, and I know that whatever's next is crazy. If they're not from my district, I'll ignore them. That happens a lot. How do you get my attention? I also agree that constituents they will get my attention pretty quickly, and certain lobbyists actually who I trust. I always thought lobbyists were just paid hacks. They're not really. There are some paid hacks for sure, but there's a lot of lobbyists who are just doing their job and doing it well to provide information. For example, I was contacted by a lobbyist to say, there's a real problem with trains. They're too long, and when they break down, they derail a lot, and they block traffic, and they block each other because the trains are longer than the siding, so they have the long trains. And she was making so much sense. I got to look into this. And I ended up sponsoring a bill, we got heard in a committee. It died in the committee, but it's going to, I think, be a topic that's going to be considered over the summer. So just having a good sense lobbyist that knows what they're talking about and raises an issue. The reason it died was it was brought up by the lobby, by a union. That's not a good reason for killing a bill. They made a good point. They had a very strong point about, look at what happened in East Palestine. That was a long train that derailed because it was too long and too heavy. And look what happened, right? So there's a lot of good stuff out there that you need to listen to people who make sense. So if you're making me a logical argument, I'll listen to you. And if you're somebody that has some credibility, not some hack that's always sending me crazy emails.
Yeah, I had a similar experience with the lobbyists. I had the same opinion, and then I would start going to the state legislature here to testify on bills, and I noticed that some of the people I'd work with on grassroots campaigns were in the position of lobbyists for some of the advocacy groups. And, the good ones are sharing information that's valuable to the legislators and helping to guide their decision making. So certainly valuable resource. Now, we've touched on this a bit, but can you give us any more tips for volunteers who want to meet with their elected officials, whether it's a tip on how to get the meeting or how to have the most effective meeting once you get there? Should they just grab you in the hall in between bills, or should they schedule a meeting? Any insights would be really valuable for this group.
So I don't know how they do it in Virginia, but what they do in Wyoming is we're in the chamber, and the chamber have sergeant at arms there, making sure that only legislators and legislative staff go inside. And there's a lobby right outside of it. I didn't even realize until I got there that's where the term lobbyist comes from, because they pull you out into the lobby to talk to you about their bills, literally in the lobby. But constituents can do that too. And I had some constituents come to me, and what they do is they write a little note and give it to the doorman, and he has a page or somebody bring it into me. And when when there's a break in the action, I can come out and go to the lobby and talk to them in the lobby, and that gets my attention. That's probably the best way to get my attention. Call me out into the lobby, especially if you're a constituent. Some of the lobbyists would call me out, and I would, think, do I want to do this or not? But if it's a constituent, I'm out there to talk to them. So physical contact like that is great. We don't have any offices in our office in Wyoming is our desk on the floor. That's the only thing we can call an office. So there's no other way for us to be contacted. We do get requests for meetings back in our districts when we go home on weekends, and especially over the summer. Now we're going to have a lot of informational meetings and lobbying meetings and those kinds of things. And those are useful. But again, the only way really to contact us is by email. We have no telephones for ourselves, and we don't have any other physical place to meet other than back in the district usually.
Great. Well, that's incredibly helpful information. I think this has been really insightful, and I appreciate you coming up here to answer some questions. I do have one more question for you, and I'm hoping you'll leave us on a positive note here. Why are you hopeful that we'll ultimately be successful and get this amendment passed?
Because 80 to 90% of Americans believe in us. Any poll you ever look at, it's the lowest I've seen is 80% support us. The highest is above 90%. With that kind of popular support, ultimately we're going to have to win. If we keep raising the issue and elevating it, making it visible, everybody knows what's going on. Everybody understands what's going on. Even the Republicans do. In our district, I think we would have gotten it passed in the House. Had that bill started in the House, it would have passed. But I think the Team Normal would have been behind it, and then the five of us would have put it over the top. So I think we could have gotten it done in the House. But it's just so popular. It's just so obvious that money is corrupting the system. Everybody knows it. And if we just have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing until we get it done, one way or another.
Well, I couldn't agree more with you, Ken. Thank you again for joining us this evening and for your service in the legislature.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to call Mike back up for the remainder of the meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Ken, Representative Chesnick. Great stuff. Very informative meeting tonight. Yeah, I appreciate these conversations a lot. We've only got a few minutes, so I will wrap it up. I did want to highlight this question. I don't know if you guys saw it or not. Still getting used to this technology, but Maria just wanted to clarify. This is a non-binding resolution calling for an amendment. Just wanted to clarify that, right? The one that you were talking about earlier. This is a state level resolution asking Congress to support the amendment, correct? Ken?
I'm sorry. I was typing a response to Nancy.
Yeah. I think this was just, this is Marie just looking for clarification when the bill you were talking about going through the legislature. State resolution, right?
It's a state resolution. It's binding. We would send it to the Senate and the House leadership and the president and say, we're adding our list. We're adding our name to the group of people who want this bill. Now it's obvious all of it is non-binding. If we get the 34 states to do that, or the 38 states that we need to ratify it, that's not binding on anybody. But if we pass the resolution, it would be the official position of the state of Wyoming that we want this, and that's what we're looking for.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, just wanted to clarify that. Appreciate that. Ken. And I'm going to leave you with that same link that we started with because it has a lot of what you need to take the next steps. So I'm just going to put it in the chat one more time. Make sure it's the right one. Just well, let me put it this way. Let me know if it's not the right one. But it's the document that has. I'm also going to share my screen actually and just go over it with you really quickly here to wrap up. So let's do this. Okay. So just a quick overview of what this document has on it for next steps. Let's see here. Make sure to RSVP for the next call is going to be actually a writing one. So Maria, I'll give you just a minute to talk about that if you want here at the end, but you can RSVP right at the top. There's going to be a legislative advocacy training number 3 on March 23rd. What we're going to do on that one is share stories from these meetings that we're setting up right now. Learn from each other. This is what we're doing here at American Promise. We're really building something where we are making connections with elected officials, again, at all levels of government, and we're learning from each other constantly. And we're going to keep doing it until we get this amendment. So really important, the very top link there in legislative advocacy links right here is to report progress. This is really important because we really want to know what's happening out there. Now you can report just getting a meeting scheduled. If you do that through this form, this is in the Action Center, you have to be logged in. Then we're going to give you all the context and resources and everything that you need to make that meeting successful. So this top one right here is really important. Once you get a meeting scheduled, let us know, and then let us know after you've had it to report on it. Let us know how it went. And then this is the action plan that Chris has gone over in the past. It's just a worksheet that you can copy and paste for yourself. The Action Center, I highly encourage you to check this out if you haven't yet. There's a citizen challenge for March right now, which is to schedule a meeting with a legislator. And it actually has all the steps right on there. And it has templates to help you get the meeting scheduled. So make sure to check that out. Again, that's the Citizen Pledge for March is where you want to go for what we're doing right now with elected officials. And then you've just got some other resources, finding local and state resolutions. This is what we went over last week, which is to see if your city or town has passed anything in support of the amendment. So this is a really very interesting link right here, actually. And then template for the resolution supporting the amendment. If you decide you want to try to get something passed at the city level, we go to your city council members. This is a template for that. Candidate Pledge Program, of course, we've talked a lot about that. That links to the website. And then we've got the past recording. So if you did want to check out the ones we've done leading up to this, you can see them here. And then, of course, I'll link this one as soon as it's ready after tonight. And then I want to leave you on this note. If you want any support, if you have any questions whatsoever about how to get started, definitely go to this link here, Legislative Advocacy and Support Calendar. And I will spend 30 minutes with you to make sure that you have the resources and you know the background of your state, et cetera. So that's what this is for. And then writing in media, same thing. If you have writing in your background, you see these op-eds that we talked about tonight getting published or these letters to the editor, and you want to be involved with that team, you can either RSVP for the next call with Marie, or you can just book a 30-minute meeting and I'll make sure you have all those links and you're connected with the team myself. So that's it. And that again is in the chat, that document, and you can find it all right there. So on that note, Marie, I don't know if you want to say anything about the next writing call just to close up.
Sure. So our next call is on Tuesday, the 21st at 7:30 p.m. And we're going to talk about using letters to the editor to call out your legislative representatives, certainly the congressional representatives or your state lawmakers, if that's who you're focusing on. And particularly, I'll give you examples. Steve and Barb, talked about the derailment. They talked about the Koch money going into the primaries, which they've never done before. They always waited until there was a primary candidate. We've had other letters that were about the amount of donations and lobbying that have gone in from the railroad industry into preventing institutions and actually overturning regulations that would have made trains safer. and using those articles to say money prevented the institution of these safety regulations and Americans paid for it with the loss of their property value, and this shouldn't be the way it is, calling on Representative Smith and Representative Jones to support an amendment to get money out of politics. So this isn't the way things are done. That type of a format. We're going to go over those types of letters, and we're going to start the process of writing op-eds, especially collaborative op-eds if you're going to do your meeting with your member of Congress. And one of the things you're going to ask for is for them to support you and support our work by collaborating on an op-ed. This is going to help you to lay the groundwork, because you're probably going to have to write a draft and submit it and then get some feedback back from them. They won't just say, oh yeah, sure, our comms people will take care of it and do all the work for you, and then you just get to put your name on it. So we'll walk you through that whole process.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Marie. That's a good note to end on. Keep up the good work over there with the writing team, and to everyone else, let's get some meetings set up. You know, next week is Citizen Lobby Week, so we'd love to be able to share, you know, some stories from around the country from meetings that took place. So whatever your level of engagement is here, you know, if you're new or if you've been around for a while, you know, you can set your goals depending on that and your own experience and comfort level. But the main thing is, let's take that step. You know, let's start getting those meetings set up and start those conversations. And don't overthink it. Just do it. So that's it. We're out of time here tonight. Appreciate everyone coming on here, and we'll see you real soon. Enjoy the rest of your night, everyone. Thanks
Thanks,
again to
everybody.
Representative Shostak and Anderson.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a very good meeting. Very interesting listening to Tim Anderson and Ken Chestek.
I agree.
Thank you.
Totally.
Those viewpoints were invaluable because of the, you know, Ken had one side of the aisle and how it feels to be in a distinct minority, and Tim was operating from the other side of the aisle, and it was very interesting to hear them and how they would strategize to get something passed.
Absolutely. Yeah, I very much enjoyed it too. Yeah. All right. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Night.